I will look for those and hopefully be able to answer some of them over the course of the next 90 minutes. We're really excited to be able to be experimenting with webinars this year because it really helps us to get to congregations that are hard to reach. We have folks up in the tippy top corner of Vermont who are on the Canadian border who are there with us tonight. And we have folks from the very northernmost point in Maine as well. So this technology allows us to be with you all while you're in comfortable places and not having to drive long distances to be together. So that's the benefit. The challenge is that I'm taking material that fit into a 5-hour workshop and stuffing it into a 90-minute webinar. So there will be things that are not covered tonight, just for sake of time. And the conversations that you could have in your team and across teams that we can do in the in-person workshops, we're not going to have a lot of time for that kind of cross-connection, unfortunately. So that's just the trade-off with this technology. But bear with me. And remember that after this workshop is over, you can call me or any other person on the New England Regional staff team for follow-up questions. If you want to go deeper with any of the information that we start sharing, we're happy to do that with you. Some of the things that I'll be talking to you about tonight will work for you and others will not. So I'm hoping that you'll find at least one thing in this webinar that you can take back and start to wrestle with in your own congregation. I'm going to look at the chat box here because you all have been busy. Yay! So in Derby Line, Vermont, your church is without a minister. Yes, I saw you earlier this summer. So some guidance and advice for your situation. Good. Who's Cat Mac? Where are you from? Remind me. Oh, you're in Vermont?
Washington, Vermont.
Washington, Vermont, right. And you're struggling to survive. It sounds dire. So hopefully you'll get some ideas too. Melinda Collins is with us from the peer facilitation team. She is a member of the Milton congregation, but serves as a peer facilitator in the New England region. So she might be deployed to any congregation across New England to facilitate retreats, workshops, programs. So we're glad you're with us, Melinda. Thank you. Great. Fantastic. Now we have one more person who needs to be muted for the moment. Bear with me here. If you see that your microphone is, yeah, I think we got it. Okay, so everyone is muted now except me. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. First of all, I don't know if I officially went around and said where everybody is from, but wave if you when I call your congregation. Hello in Derby Line. Yay. Hello in Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Yay.
Yay. Let's see. Hi in Washington, Vermont. Hello. And we have, there's another Vermont and it's, Caribou, Maine. Is Caribou, Maine on yet? Yes, you're there. Hooray. Good to see you. And there's one more. Did I forget anybody? No, I think Barry, Vermont was going to be joining us, but they don't seem to be here. And of course, Melinda from the Peer Facilitators Program. Hi. Dawn, thank you so much for troubleshooting and enjoy the rest of your evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen and show some slides. Okay, minimize this. Great. So this is the workshop called This Is Our Church, Being or Becoming a More Lay-Led Congregation. So hopefully this is the workshop that you all signed up for. And I'm just gonna stop sharing for a second. Bear with me while I'm getting this technology. It'll go smoothly from here on out, folks, I promise. Okay, So I have some opening words for us tonight from Margaret Wheatley as we prepare to light the chalice, because even though we're gathering across state lines and different communities and different zip codes and different size congregations, what we're doing here is powerful religious work. So thank you for all of your dedication to the communities that you're serving. The opening words are by Margaret Wheatley, and she writes, "There is no power equal to a community discovering what it cares about." So this is the power that we know is so energizing in our congregations and so important, especially for those who are lay-led, discovering what you care about together in community. So welcome to everybody from all across New England. I'm going to start off with a question and encourage you to type into the chat box your responses. What are the kinds of things that churches do? There's no right or wrong answer. But just give us some examples of what a church does. And I'm going to unshare my screen so I can read some of your responses. Facilitating spiritual growth, gathering people to share ideas, bring new perspectives. Helping children learn to be good people. Bringing love to everyone, that's definitely part of our job. And things like worship and paying electric bills and acting as a theological center of our faith tradition, putting our faith into action and being visible in our communities. All of these things and more, right? So much more that we're asked to do. But can any of our congregations do all of the things that churches are expected to do and do it well? It's not easy, and it's especially not easy for lay-led congregations. And I want to take us up a level for just a moment to sort of get up on a higher balcony and look at the wider landscape of religious life in the United States in the 21st century. And I think you'll notice that you've got some challenges facing you that we have absolutely no control over. So let's just look at what's been happening over the last generation or so. In the past, Americans have typically inherited their churches. So you would go to the same church that your parents and your grandparents and sometimes your great-grandparents went to. And while that still is true for some folks, for most people, the church that they attend as adults is one that they've chosen and is not necessarily the church of their youth or even the same denomination as the church of their youth. Technology has changed so much in the last generation. The way we get information is different. The way we communicate with one another is different. Our attention spans are getting shorter. Where we can get information is, it's been so democratized. So it used to be perhaps if we had some questions about the book of Job or about the holiday of Passover, that we might have to go to our house of worship and ask our clergy person to help us understand it. And now we can just go on Google and find out all the information and more that we could ever want to see. So it has an impact on congregational life. I don't know if any of you have noticed this, but in some places, church attendance patterns are changing. I can't see your faces, but I'm going to assume that people are nodding, that you're noticing that this has happened too. Well, there's lots of reasons for that. People's lives are more busy. Children's lives and youth's lives are more complicated, more heavily scheduled, so their parents have to be playing taxi driver on every day of the week. There are just more things available that we can do on Sundays that we didn't used to be able to do in the time when we had blue laws across much of our region. Our kids are not always available to be with us every week, so it's difficult to have Sunday school lessons that are linear because you can't be sure that the children in the Sunday school classes from week to week will be the same ones. So you're not sure that they get the same material as the folks who were there the week before. Things like having Title IX pass in the 1970s, which was a great law that made sure there was equality of opportunity for both girls and boys and men and women to participate in organized sports, which is fantastic, except what it meant was our communities didn't really have double the number of playing fields. So now soccer games and baseball practices and all sorts of other things are now scheduled on Sunday mornings. So church is not the only game in town on Sundays anymore. You may have heard of the term spiritual but not religious. This is a rising group of Americans. They identify themselves as not belonging to any particular religious denomination. And there used to be some cultural influence that went along with being from a certain faith tradition. And that's just not true anymore. So there's not really a sense among the younger generations that there's an important reason to identify with a particular denomination. And that affects our congregational lives as well. We're also in the middle of a generational turnover. So our baby boom generation, which was the largest to date, is retiring at a rate of about 10,000 people a day. So the structures of governance and the volunteer structures and the traditions that we all have inherited in our congregations were built at a time when the baby boomers were at their, in their prime. So there were a lot of people there to shoulder the work. Well, the generation following the baby boomers is Generation X, and they're literally half the size of the baby boom generation. So as the baby boomers retire and move away from our congregations, just literally are not the same number of bodies available to take over those committee spots and those volunteer structures that were built in prior decades. Now, the millennial generation is also large. It will be as large or larger as the baby boom generation, but they're really still emerging and don't necessarily have the time to devote to volunteer work in congregations. So this definitely has an impact on our congregational life. And finally, just to go one step higher, there's a big seismic shift happening. So a theologian named Phyllis Tickle wrote a book called Emergence Christianity, in which she described how every 500 years or so, there is a giant shift in the role of church in Western society. And she's demarcated all of those 500-year shifts. And the last one was in 1517, when Martin Luther nailed his theses to a church door and sparked the Protestant Reformation. And that changed the role of church in the world up until this time. So we were inheritors of that seismic shift. And Martin Luther could have no imagining for us at the time he did it, but still we have inherited the movement that he sparked. So that was 1517, and we are very nearly in 2017. So we're just pretty much about 500 years exactly. So we have this sense that there's a giant shift happening in the way the church works in society. And so we know that things are going to be different in the coming generations. We don't know how they're going to be different. So if it feels like we're muddling along and not quite knowing what we're doing, sometimes there's a good reason for that, because sands are shifting and things are changing, and we're not quite sure how it's going to all fall out down the line. I'm just going to take a quick look, if I can, at the chat box. It looks like some folks were adding something. I see that Pittsfield has had some dramatic decrease in attendance. Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone. I've heard that in other places as well. Nancy, I hope that you have figured out your audio. If you can't get it on the computer, there's a phone-in number that you can dial in and listen from your phone. So in light of all of those things that have changed in the past, I wanted you to all of these things that we don't actually have control over, I wanted to first and foremost set you free from the expectation that you have to be the same church that existed in 1950, that you have to be a miniature version of a fully staffed church. So I want to release you from the sense that you have to be all the things for all the people all the time, and release you from thinking that there is one right way to be a lay-led congregation, and that if only somebody would tell you, you would do it. If I had one right way, I would share it with you. But the truth is, the right way for you is going to depend a lot on
Nothing.
Oops, I'm going to ask, is that Nancy, to mute your microphone? Thanks. So there is nobody who's got the right answer. The right answer is going to be the one that's right for you, with the people you have in your congregation now, in the context, in the community that you are living in now. So the good news is there are lots of ways to be a good and healthy lay-led church, and they're not all going to look alike. But I do want you to know that you are enough. I hear that some of you are tired. When I talk to folks in small lay-led congregations, they are tired. They feel like they're not doing enough or not doing it right. But you are enough. And I want you to know that there's a lot of different ways to be a small lay-led congregation, and we're going to talk about ways that you can do it without burning yourself out, without overextending your resources, just finding the thing that is yours to do, and to do that as best you can and bring that gift into the world, because we can't do all of the things in any one congregation, especially one that doesn't have professional staff. So instead of asking what it is that churches do, like worship and committee meetings and everything else, what if we ask the question, what do churches exist to do? And I invite you to put your responses into the chat box. And provide a place of peace, provide space for spiritual community, make lots of music, care about people. Providing framework and structure. All of those things. Churches serve a particular function in society. And at their best, I think we hope for this in an ideal world, that the mark of our effective churches is not how many people come through the doors, but how many people live differently as a result of having been with us. I think we want people to be changed. We want people to be challenged to be better. We want to make a difference. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to have an impact on the community for the better. We want to bend that arc of justice closer, and we want beloved community to be brought nearer. So the question, of course, is how? How do we do this? How do we create healthy lay-led congregations? How do we share the ministry with people who are not professional ministers? And how do we decide what's ours to do without burning everybody out? One word: simplify. Now, I was tempted to say simplify, 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 but really to simplify it, I should say it once. This will be one of our watchwords for tonight. I think one of the most important things that a lay-led congregation can do for themselves is to simplify their programs, their organizations, and maybe even the committee structures to try and maximize the impact that your work can have on the world and on your community. So we'll get back to some more concrete ways to simplify things, but first I want to explore a sense of purpose, because I think it's really important, especially in lay-led congregations, to stay in touch with the purpose of your church. It's much easier in congregations where there is a ministerial presence that is always there to call you back to what it is that we exist for. It's easy to get lost in the busyness of taking care of all of the things that you are responsible for taking care of. But it's really important to keep as a touchstone the purpose of our churches. And for this evening's webinar, I am using this as your purpose. Purpose of your congregation is to bring the love and grace of Unitarian Universalism to your people, to your community, and to our world. This, I think, is really the purpose of all of our congregations, and it has been the purpose of religious community for millennia. Now let me unpack the words love and grace. I can't see your faces now, but sometimes people are asking me to explain what I mean by those words. I take love from our theological tradition of Unitarianism that tells me that I am held, that there is one love greater than my understanding, and it is holding me. And grace comes from our Universalist heritage, and it tells me that I have done nothing to earn that love, and I can do nothing to lose it. So that's the grounding of, in a very small nutshell, of our theology in this purpose. So the purpose of all of our congregations is to extend the love and grace of our faith into the world. How we do that is what makes your unique congregation different from all the rest, and will define what your mission is, what is yours to do. Having a mission statement that is brief and simple and powerful and easy to remember can really help to guide you towards knowing what your congregation is uniquely equipped to do and what you have the capacity to do. It tells you something about how you are going to bring the love and grace of our faith into your people's lives. It will help you to decide what of all of the myriad things that a church could do will be yours to do. And it will help you to measure your impact as you go along. Do any of you have a mission statement that you use currently? I'm going to ask you to raise hand. I'm going to look and see your faces. Do any of you have a mission statement that you're using now? I don't see any hands. Okay, that's fine. That might be a homework assignment. It might be a really helpful thing to experiment with, the process of coming up with a mission statement that would explain how we bring the love and grace of our faith into the world. We don't think it has to be a long process. In fact, we would rather see you take a shorter process and review it every 3 to 5 years, just to see how much in the world has changed, how much in your congregation has changed, what new people, what new gifts do you have, what new needs are arising in your community. So we don't want you to be locked into a mission statement that you take 5 years to write and feel like you have to live with it for 10 or 15 years if it's not going to serve your purpose. So let me show you a quick video. I'm going to share my screen again. This is from a series of videos called Chuck Knows Church. And in this one of the members of the congregation is working on a mission statement. So I will play it and then we'll have a chance to reflect on it afterwards.
I am. I have the privilege of the questions.
Oh, right on. That's not,
Don't interrupt me.
well, it was just fun. Yeah,
Mr. Chuck, I'm almost finished. Done.
done. Good. All right. Lay it on me. It was so important.
Loving.
I like it. Concise, to the point.
Is the mission of Park Grove Community Church. This is to love and worship God, strive to be obedient to God's biblical mandate to make disciples by introducing individuals to Jesus Christ, make them known in His redeeming grace, and further to develop a foundational knowledge and uncompromising commitment to the Word of God, which equips them for service to the sanctifying power of the Holy Spirit. And provides them a biblical worldview, biblical life view, biblical family view, biblical relationship view, biblical view on pet ownership, all of which provides the proper spiritual development in areas of intellectual and spiritual maturity, and also a missions perspective on their neighbor, their nation, their continent, their planet, and their galaxy, should the need arise of making disciples of extraterrestrials. Amen. The extraterrestrials part is my favorite.
Do you realize you said the whole thing, just two breaths?
And it's only one sentence.
You know, Glenda, brevity is the soul of wit.
I know, right?
Okay. What do you think about that mission statement? Let's give you a chance to unmute your microphone if you want to have any reflections on what you heard.
Go ahead, Judy.
Well, we could have heard it better. Somehow it didn't come through, the audio didn't come through. But we could see that she was very harangue type, and he was trying to assimilate it as well as the donut.
Right. I'm sorry that you had trouble with the audio. You'll have a link to this in the email that gets sent out after the webinar, so you can watch it on your own.
We hear you fine. We just
good.
couldn't hear the video.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that true for everybody? Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, dear. Oh, well, it's much funnier if you could hear it. Basically, what she said was she had a mission statement that she had been working on, and she started off by saying, the mission of Park Grove Church is loving people to life. And then she stood up and went on with a long list of things that meant, and said it all in pretty much one breath. And it's meant to show that a simple and elegant and powerful mission statement that you can remember and easily repeat is so much more powerful than trying to pack everything but the kitchen sink into a single mission statement. So I apologize for the tech failure. I tested the video before we came online tonight. I apologize for that. So basically, what I want to encourage you all to think about is what might be a simple, elegant mission statement for your congregation. So how would you bring the love and grace of Unitarian Universalism to our people? Maybe it would be by feeding hearts and bodies, or maybe it would be by standing out for justice. Maybe what you do best is to share music and worship. If I had to ask you to come up with a mission statement now, what might it be? And I'll invite you to put it in the chat box if you could think of one, or one that you might aspire to. What would you like your church to be known for? One of the gifts of having a mission statement that is simple and powerful and memorizable is that it really helps to give newcomers something a hook to remember, so that when they're asked by their family and friends, why are you going to that church? What do they do there? And they can say, oh, we're a place of refuge and growth. Thank you, David. We're a sharing community. Milton's is, we welcome all to grow deep faith and take bold action. Nice. The other gift of having a mission statement like that, that's simple and memorizable, is that you can align all of the other programs of your church around it. So you can look at the programs you're offering, the ministries that you're doing, the traditions that you're carrying forward, and make sure that everything aligns to what it is that you say you do best and that you're best equipped to do in your community. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And remember, your mission statement doesn't have to be a forever mission statement. It really is best, especially in lay-led congregations where, your time and resources are limited. So I don't want you to go out and spend like a lot of time on creating a long, involved mission statement, but something that you can just live into for the moment, and it reflects who you are today and what the needs in your community are today and how those things can meet. That is really as simple as that. That's all you need. I'm going to go back to the slides now. I'm going to move on from purpose to knowing yourself. So knowing something about your congregational identity. Some of our congregations here in New England have been around for close to 400 years, and others are less than 50 years old. So in some places there's a lot of history. There are a lot of stories about who you are. But it can really be a powerful tool to have a good grasp on what you think your congregational identity is, because it can help you decide what is yours to do. And it can magnify the impact of the things you do by focusing your time and attention and resources there. Let me give you an example. This is a picture from our congregation in Woodstock, Vermont. Now, the folks in Woodstock decided that what they do best and what they love to do and they're really good at is food and hospitality. So they took the lawn, the property around their church, they have a small grassy area, and they turned it into a permaculture garden. And they did that through a partnership with a local elementary school. So in the top picture, you can see that there are elementary students on a field trip in the permaculture garden. They grow flowers and they grow vegetables there. And in the backyard, you'll see in the bottom picture, they have put in a pizza oven. So they can make and share community meals right on their property. So they've taken their identity as a church that loves hospitality and food and put it into use in a very real way. I don't have a picture for this one, but I wanted to share the story of a congregation in Pennsylvania who was also very small, and they were a lay-led congregation. In their community, there was a couple years ago a series of floods, and there were a lot of homes that were damaged, and people were displaced for a period of time. Their church was not damaged, however, and they wanted to respond and help out in some kind of meaningful way. And what they asked themselves, well, what can we do? We're very small. We don't have a lot of money. We can't build these new homes for people. But what we can do, we make great pies. This was a church of bakers, and they had this, what they did. They made great pies. So that's what they did. They made a bunch of pies. They delivered them to first responders. They delivered them to people who had been displaced. They delivered them to shelters where people were waiting out the storms. So they lived out their faith in that way. It was not just pies. It was not just feeding people. It was a ministry of witness and compassion and a ministry of solidarity with all who suffer. So there's some pretty deep theology baked into that pie crust. Let me also share with you this story of a congregation in Connecticut, the UU congregation of Greater Bridgeport, they, 3 or 4 years ago, they were struggling as a lay-led congregation. They were unable to support the building that they were in, and they took a long time to decide whether they would still be a congregation without their building. And they ultimately decided they would be. So they sold their building and rented office space for a year and a half. And after staying together during that time, they found a synagogue that was going on the market, and it was affordable for them. So they have now moved into this synagogue building that you can see from their website. And they're in the process, they have developed a very, very strong lay-led worship ministry. They're really, really proud of the lay-led worship services that they provide. But they were craving some deeper connection with other Unitarian Universalist congregations, and in particular, they were really hoping to, what they felt they were missing was pastoral care from a minister, because they aren't able to afford a minister still. So what they did was they wrote a lovely letter to several neighboring churches identifying who they were and offering to share with them the gifts of their lay-led worship services, and asking in return for the opportunity to avail themselves of pastoral care from that congregation's minister. And they have been in conversation and growing and deepening partnership with the church in Meriden for a year and a half now. And it's been beautiful to watch. But it started from them identifying that they would remain a congregation no matter where they were, and that they were a congregation that excelled at lay-led worship services. So they experienced themselves as having a gift to share with the world. So this is a good conversation to have with folks in your congregation. We call it a narrow focus, or defining your niche. So figuring it out, what is it that you do really well? In most of New England, our churches are fairly close, at least within driving distance, to other UU congregations. Maybe not so much up in the northern part of Maine, where y'all are from, you folks up in Caribou. But in other parts of New England, our churches are close together, and usually we're not the only liberal religious community in town. So it's really important for especially lay-led congregations to know what it is that you do well, and to do that so well that people want to be a part of it. And it's become something that you're known for, and it's a way of separating yourself from other liberal religious communities that folks might be able to choose from. The other real important part of identifying your niche, or knowing what your focus is and really narrowing your attention to doing what you do well, is that it's really faithful. There's a lot of faithfulness in living into your resources and accepting that you cannot be all things to all people, but really putting your heart and soul into the things that you do well, and do it in a faithful and intentional way. So what might it look like to do just one thing and do it well? Well, I gave you an example of the folks in Greater Bridgeport. But what if your congregation really did social justice well? That was your thing. You stood up for social justice, but not so much for worship. Well, what if you didn't have worship every week? What if you only had worship twice a month, and the other 2 Sundays you could do a social justice project, because that's something that you excel at, and your gift to the community. I believe in Caribou, they have done this as well. They've really narrowed down what they do to being largely a worshiping community. And if I'm not mistaken, you worship on Wednesday evenings, twice a month. So that's a niche for you. You don't have to have all of the other trappings of being a fully staffed church. You are doing what you're doing and paying attention to that. What if you don't have a religious education program? We had a congregation in New Hampshire that I spoke with not long ago that felt so badly about themselves because they didn't have a religious educator on staff. So I asked them how many children they had in the congregation, and they said, we don't have any. And in fact, it turned out that in that town, the high school had been closed down the year before because there just were not any children in town feeding the school. So if yours is a community that doesn't have children, you do not have to have a religious education program for children and youth. Maybe the ministry that's available to you is ministry to folks in midlife or to folks in aging years. Maybe the ministry of childhood religious education just isn't yours to do. So again, let's get back to that word, simplify. I've already said how many times it's important for lay-like congregations to not overly complexify things because you have limited resources, limited time available to you, limited financial resources. We all know that's true. But sometimes over the long years of our history, we do inherit structures and programs and traditions that served us well and had good reason for being at the time when they started, but now they just stress us out because we're trying to maintain them all. So I'm going to take a moment and let's explore how you can simplify various aspects of your congregational life. And again, not all of this might apply to your location, but hopefully something here will ring a bell. So let's talk about simplifying worship. As anyone who has been part of a worship committee knows, it takes a lot of time to create good, meaningful worship, especially if you're trying to do it every week. Well, as I mentioned, one idea might be to not worship every week. Another idea might be to use materials that are freely available to you to augment your worship practices. So there are a number of UU congregations that record their worship services. So you could gather together at your regular worship time and watch a service from one of the other congregations, or even a worship service from General Assembly. And yes, if you are watching recorded worship together, I do expect you to sing along with all the hymns with everyone else, and stay around after the recording to talk about the sermon and to mingle with your church friends as you would do any other week, and talk about how the sermon related to where you are in your life right now, or what's happening in your community. So it's the same as having worship that you lead, only you're letting someone else lead it for you. Another idea is a free resource that was just launched this fall. It's called Braver, Wiser, and you'll have a link to this in your follow-up email. Braver, Wiser sends an email to you once a week on Wednesdays. And it has words of inspiration and a reflection and a brief prayer. And it's written by one of about a half dozen Unitarian Universalist ministers and religious educators. So if you signed up to Braver Wiser as a congregation, and some of your churches are small enough that all of you could get the email, you would know that on Wednesdays, you are all sharing this spiritual practice together as a congregation. These are also things that you can post to your church's Facebook page in case you think anyone is looking for your church on Facebook. I don't know if all of you have Facebook presences. I know some of you do. Another set of free resources is theme-based church. This is from our Unitarian Universalist Association website. They have a number of resources for theme-based church. So theme-based church means we pick a theme for the month and we organize ourselves around it. So you can come to this page and you can identify a theme that you're interested in. Let's see, January's theme is ground. So you can find opening words that relate to this theme. You can find readings that will relate to this theme. They can suggest hymns that will relate to the theme. You can find on another page that you'll also get a link to, Tapestry of Faith curricula. So you can look up lessons and stories for children of all ages and adults of all ages as well. So you can find lessons that you could do together. It's the beauty of it is that there's a simplicity to it. We know that in January, we're all going to be considering the theme of ground, apparently. And so if I'm not at worship service the first 2 weeks of the month and I pop in the third week of the month, I can still pick up on the conversation because we're all sharing the same theme and grappling with it in different ways throughout the entire month. We can organize faith formation activities on it. Theme-based church is related to faith formation as well as worship planning. The resources are applicable to both. You can organize your social justice programs around this. You can make this a focus of the whole congregation. It just simplifies things. You don't have to come up with a new idea for each week if you are on an overworked worship committee. And as I said, related to theme-based church, you don't need to have Sunday school to have faith formation. And here's a screenshot of the Tapestry of Faith page on our UUA website. There are programs that start in preschool and go all the way up to elder years. You can find stories on any theme or any lesson. So even if you don't do theme-based church, if you are planning a worship service and you may have children in the congregation, you can download a story that goes along with the theme of your sermon and have that available for families to explore either at church or when they go home together. This is something that our folks in Sherborne, Mass. Have done. So it looks like pages from a passport, right? So they've developed a passport for their coming of age program. And on the pages, there are different activities for the children and for the youth, to do. So they have to sign up for a coffee hour to help set up coffee hour. They have to observe a board meeting. They have to volunteer with one of the social justice projects that the church does. So this is something that they created, and you'll have a link to this too, so you can download it if you wanted to use it as well. It's a way to, when the youth participate in this way, they will get a stamp and a date by the person, the adult with whom they work. I think this is also a great thing for newcomers, people who are new to our churches, to get a passport as well and to learn about how our churches work by trying to participate in some way. So this is a great way to break down what needs to be done over the course of the year. Like, we need to have somebody organize the Christmas pageant, or we need to have someone organize the yard work in spring cleaning. If you make those items part of your passport, you can encourage one another to participate in ways that you are able to. I know we hear a lot of times that we just don't have enough people to fill our committees. I think if we, instead of filling our committees, if we thought about our tasks, especially in smaller congregations, the tasks that need doing, and break them down in that way, it might be easier to find people willing to do one-time tasks rather than agreeing to serve on a committee for a longer period of time. So again, simplify, simplify, simplify. Let me share with you a quote by Alice Blair Wesley. She writes, "Show me the patterns of your church organization, and I'll show you what the people of your church find worthiest of your loyalty." She says organization and theology are not two different things. So imagine if your church's org chart resembled this one. This is not an org chart from an actual UU church, you'll be glad to know. But if it was, and if it's true that organization and theology are not two different things, what on earth would this tell us about what is worthy for these folks? It feels daunting and exhausting just looking at it. I'm going to give you a piece of homework here. And again, you'll have this in your follow-up email. When we met in person and had the workshop in person, we took some time for folks to sit down and draw an org chart or a visual expression of how their church was organized. Because we don't have time to do that during this webinar, I'm going to ask you to take time to do this when you're with your colleagues in your own congregations. So write or draw your church's organization. You can use an org chart or a mind map or a list or whatever is easiest for you. And be as complete as you can. So list all of the standing committees, all the boards, the governing boards, and the task groups, if there are any ad hoc task groups that are working. And when you're done, find a place to hang it up so that others can look at it too, and just get feedback from folks. Ask yourself and ask other people, if you were newcomers to this place, what would you notice? And what do you think it says about the most important values and the things that your people felt most worthy of your time and attention at the time when these things were set up? This comic looks like some of the org charts I have seen from actual UU churches. How is it that our church has more committees than members? I don't know if it ever feels like that to you, but the reality is, especially in lay-led congregations, there is a limited number of volunteer hours available. And part of our responsibility, if we're leaders in those congregations, is to be stewards of our people's time. So let's talk about the committees and how to keep them simple. So one thing to think about is to streamline your church structure. If you find you have a lot of committees and that you are always struggling to fill the committee slots, there is a rule of thumb that I hear talked about a lot, that 20% of our people really do 80% of the work. And I've heard that over and over again. But there is also a corollary to that 80-20 rule, and that is that 80% of folks who attend a congregation would be willing to do something to support it, but often that doesn't mean joining a committee. So in looking at your committee structures, ask yourself, is this a committee where we make a plan for the future, organize ideas, and celebrate the people who helped make the ideas happen? That would be real work of committees. Or are our committees more like task forces or task groups where people are doing the work of implementing the programs and not just planning them? Often what happens in our congregations is we will ask people to join committees based on what jobs they do. So if you're a teacher, you might be asked to be on the RE committee. And then we ask them to serve on the committee where we don't actually ask them to bring their expertise. We ask them to help buy snacks for the program, or to cut out paper wreaths to decorate the classrooms, or some other thing that will help, will certainly have meaning and purpose, but it's not what they were invited, not the reason why they were invited to join this committee. So if we thought more of our committees as really limited to planning the course for the next year in this particular ministry, in the example of the RE committee, so they'd make a plan for what we want to be accomplished in religious education this year. And then dividing up what the tasks are that need to happen. So somebody needs to buy the snacks. Well, there's somebody in the congregation who goes to Costco once a month and would be happy to add the church snacks onto their shopping list. And that's somebody who might not want to join a committee, but would be happy to do something to help the church. So that's one of the things we can do, is to streamline our infrastructure a little bit and help share the load and not overburden folks who are serving on multiple committees at the same time. Speaking of which, what if you had one day a month that was the committee meeting day? Maybe it would be after services on the third Sunday of the month. Maybe it would be on a Tuesday evening where you could have childcare available and have a meal together, and then everyone breaks and goes to their committee meetings. Well, this would allow for cross-pollination. So if buildings and grounds needed to talk to somebody on the worship committee, they could just go down the hall and have that conversation. It's also a way to build community in between worship services, and it's more efficient. And if you do have a minister on a part-time basis, it allows them to be present for at least a few minutes at each committee meeting, rather than having to attend 8 or 9 or 10 or more meetings in the course of a month. It also reduces the expectation that people should serve on more than one committee at a time. And I think that is a faithful position to take. I think that we really need to be thoughtful about how we use our volunteer resources. And that's one way to do it. Another way to think about streamlining your committee infrastructure is to take your mission statement or your purpose statement and say, with each committee, does this move us towards our mission and the way that we see ourselves bringing the love and grace of our faith into the world? And if your committee does serve that, then yeah, keep it and figure out how to make it work. But if it doesn't, it might be time to just let it go. So how do you let go of a committee that's been around for a long time, especially? I'll give you this tool that I use, and you'll have a copy of this in your follow-up email as well. I call it my housekeeping tool. So right there in the middle, I would put your mission statement, your purpose, your reason for being, your method of carrying our love and grace into the world. So we're a place of refuge and spiritual growth, if I'm remembering one of the comments before. Let's use that as an example. You would put that right in the middle, and then you could make a list of all of your committees in the church today and ask yourself, does this align with our mission? Does it help us with our mission? Does it move us forward? Does it help us create a space of refuge and growth in our community? If that committee does, then you would put it right up here at the top in the keep column. Perhaps there are committees or programs or events that you run every year that you have inherited, and they might move you towards your mission, but they're not. Maybe they just need to be adapted. Maybe you need to find a new partner to help them work better. Maybe there's a way to do it that isn't quite as cumbersome. So put it in this box on the bottom. We'll keep it, but we're going to work on it to make it work more effectively. Anything that is not moving you towards your mission, that is taking more resources than it is giving back to the mission of the congregation, you can release. You can stop doing some of those things. And that may be a difficult thing to do, especially if there are people who feel strongly about the program or the tradition that you're talking about losing, or people who've been chair of that committee for 40 years. It will be hard to let that go. So let me spend a minute to talk about that. My friend and colleague Tandy Rogers has a process she calls strategic disappointment. So she was at one time a interim director of the Youth and Young Adult Program at the UUA headquarters. And because she was an interim, part of her job was to figure out how to rearrange the office, how to shift the role of the director to make space for the new person to come in and to decide a future course for that office. And she knew she couldn't do that and do all of the things that the office was responsible for doing every year. So she picked out 4 things that she knew she wasn't going to be able to do this year, 4 things that had been done every year in the past. And she asked her boss, who's going to be mad at me if I don't do this thing? And he gave her a list of people. It was somebody who made a large donation to make the program happen, someone who had been doing the same program for 25 years, people who were really invested in these 4 things that she was going to say she could no longer do. So she made personal phone calls to each of those people and said, this is who I am, this is my role, and I'm calling to let you know I'm going to disappoint you this year. But I want you to know there's a reason for it. And she shared with them what her strategy was in deciding which things she could do and which things she could not do. She thanked them for their support of the programs over the many years. She recognized the importance of them in their lives and in the lives of so many other people over the years. And she gave them a sense of the kind of ministry that she would be freed up to do, the things that might become possible with the time that would be afforded to her and to her department moving forward. So when those events didn't happen, nobody called for her to be fired. People were disappointed, but people were understanding, and people felt witnessed, that they were seen, and that Tandy recognized how important these events and programs had been to them and to their families. And that meant something. That's a ministry of witness. And that was powerful. And that was enough for them to say, yeah, it was a good thing when it happened. And it was really needed desperately when we started it. And I see how now we can move into new places. So they were on board with her. So I offer you that as a way of talking about saying goodbye, and with gratitude and grace for the things that are taking more of your time in lay-led congregations than you are receiving back in benefits from them. Let me just stop here and check the chat box. I don't see any new questions, but let me just stop here and ask if there are any questions or comments that people want to make at this point. You can go ahead and unmute your microphone if you do. Good for now? Okay. I wish we did have time to talk, to have more dialogue back and forth, but I'm just going to push on in the hopes of offering you some more things that might be useful in the days to come. There we go. Okay, I think we did really cover volunteers a little bit in talking about simplifying committees. Let's talk about stewardship, and not just the stewardship of time in committee meetings, but also stewardship about money, because really that's the brass tacks we're all talking about when we say stewardship, right? How do we get more money? Well, again, I don't have the answer, the magic answer to that, but once again, I would offer you the mission statement or the purpose that you all can start talking about. So if you identify your purpose as a community, I'm going to pull out the one I remember, is to create a space of refuge and growth. How much more likely would people be to give to a mission of providing refuge and growth, as opposed to feeling a message of guilt and duty and obligation? So one of the things that our stewardship experts advise is to craft your stewardship message when you're asking for funds, to craft those messages in a hopeful way and to let people know the mission that their stewardship will support. People are much more likely and much more responsive to donor programs when they feel like there's a mission that's being advanced through their help. It's much, we feel much better about giving to a mission than just to, put new carpeting in a building. Not that new carpeting doesn't have to happen, but it's not as easy as sell. So I offer you that. I did sit in on a webinar we held recently with Mary Catherine Morn about fundraising and stewardship. And one thing that I was really taken with was how many people on the webinar talked about giving envelopes. So you may want to experiment with this. Some denominations give giving envelopes to everyone, every member of the congregation, children all the way up to adults. And people are given a bunch of envelopes at the beginning of the year, and they bring them into services with them, and they give. And it really was a powerful experience that people in the webinar talked about. So I just offer that as an example of something that can be a reminder from week to week to week that we are responsible stewards of our congregations. And that's another thing that Mary Catherine Moore advised, is that when we're talking about money and finances, we should not communicate about it only once a year during the stewardship drive. We need to be in continual conversation about how we are sustaining our communities of faith. And one way we do that is through finances. And so if we only do that once a year, we're giving up a lot of opportunities to practice stewardship as a discipline. I also want to share some ideas for online giving. So there's if you have a website, you can of course put a donation button on your website, but there are also ways that you can have people donate to your church when they're doing their other online activities. If they're doing online shopping, for example, there is a program from Amazon.com. It's called the Smile program. If you sign up, if you register your church with that program, then every time one of your members purchases something from Amazon, if they have identified you as their Smile recipient, then your congregation can receive additional funds from those purchases. There's also a program, I believe it's called Search for Good. It's a search engine that is similar to Google, except again, you identify a nonprofit or religious institution that will receive a donation every time you search for something through the web browser. Now, if you're me, if you're like me, you use Google a couple of dozen times a day. So those little tiny fractions of giving could add up if you could participate in that program. There are also ways to save funds. And of course, we all do the best we can to save our funds, but one of the ways to do that might be to cost share with other neighbors. Is there a organization, a nonprofit, or another church in your neighborhood, and both of you have big parking lots that need plowing in the winter? Maybe you could get a better deal on snow plowing if you partnered up with somebody else. Or maybe you could, there's lots of other cost-effective ways, cost-sharing things that you can do with another congregation or nonprofit. If you have a little bit of funding in your congregation for a part-time administrator to answer phones, maybe there's another part-time administrator position open in another community organization, and you could share that staff person. And the way technology works today, I'm sure you could even have them answer your phones remotely. So that might be a way to help both the agency and your congregation as well. There are energy efficient appliances out there, and sometimes there are grants that are available for you to upgrade your boiler or your kitchen stove to work more efficiently. I think in most states you can get a free energy audit where the electric company will come to your building and go through and give you ideas for becoming more energy efficient. And that could, of course, save on heating bills, which is a huge deal in New England if you own your own building. I know our folks up in Caribou no longer own their buildings, so that's not part of their question anymore. And I want to share with you news about Faithify. I don't know if you've heard of Faithify. It's faithify.org. It is a crowdfunding platform on the internet. It's similar to GoFundMe or Kickstarter, where you can post a project that you would like support for, and people can donate to it. So you do have to do some groundwork. You have to get a network of people that you believe you can tap who might be willing to donate to a project. This is not something that is good for an annual budget you wouldn't use Faithify to make sure you make your budget at the, if you don't have enough in your pledge income or your rental income, but it is something that has been helpful for folks for one-time projects or extraordinary projects. Folks have used Faithify to plan ordination services. People have used Faithify to replace carpeting in their sanctuary. People have used Faithify to fund a scholarship for youth to attend General Assembly. People have used Faithify for a summer camp program for UU youth and children. So those are discrete projects that you might be thinking there's something that you want to get done or that you need to get done, but you can't raise the capital on your own. There are neighbors in faith who are willing to donate to your projects. 78% of Faithify projects get funded, which is well above the average for other crowdfunding sites out there on the internet. So we feel pretty good about that, and we can give you more information about that as well. Let's see. Oh, of course, collaborate. So here in New England, like I said, we have this blessing of geography, and I encourage you to collaborate with neighboring congregations. My job title for the New England region is support of small congregations and congregational collaborations. So this is totally my jam. So if you are interested in collaborating with your neighboring congregations or even congregations farther afield, please do let me know how I can help you structure those collaborations and support you in moving forward with them. So who would you maybe want to collaborate with? If you worship every week and you're a lay-led congregation, could you share worship services with a neighboring church so that your congregation only needs to come up with 2 a month, and so does their congregation, and then you exchange pulpits twice a month? Is there a UCC church in your community? Perhaps you could collaborate to offer an OWL program, and even if you have only 1 or 2 teenagers in your congregation, maybe along with the teenagers in their congregation and other friends of theirs from the local high school, you could get together a number of teens who would want the OWL program, and you could join together to bring that to your community, and that's a real gift to your community. So if you have another UU church within, driving distance, are you reading their newsletter? Are you getting their newsletter? Are you looking at their Facebook page? Are you looking for ways that you could worship together? There is a cluster of congregations that worship together 5 times a year. On each of the 3-day weekends, they spend at one of the 5 congregations in the collaboration. So those are days that are typically low attendance in their churches. So by joining together for those 5 days, they are in a large congregation and meeting folks across church boundaries. So I just want to encourage you to think about ways that you could be collaborating with someone. And also, you could take the load off of some of your organizing committees and your committee work. If there's a social justice issue that is really burning in your state or your region, there are state networks of UU social action folks that you can collaborate with. You don't have to create those witness projects out of the box all by yourself. I'm going to go back to gallery view now. And I know there were a couple of things that were posted into the chat box. Oh, Marilyn tells us that Good Shop is a similar website that also donates back to your organization. Good to know. So Faithify taps into sources anywhere in the world. So I have funded projects in Kenya and in Los Angeles and in rural Canada. It's great. You can make your project available to the world, and there are folks who can go back to Faithify repeatedly and look for new projects to fund. And if you have extended family or friends from other parts of the country, you can send them the link as well. And if 10 people put in $10, you've already got $100. So it's fun to watch that crowdfunding work. Pittsfield would like to collaborate with others. And there is, yes, the greater, the Southern Berkshires meeting house. They just bought a new meeting house, I think, a year ago, last winter. Yeah. Pittsfield, why don't we talk later, and we'll see if we can figure out a way to connect you all together. I'm going to invite you to unmute your microphones if you would like to and ask any questions. How about using Facebook? Tell me more, Kat, about what you mean about how, in your question. There's lots of ways we can use Facebook to stay connected with our congregations. Where are you, Kat? To spread the word about your church. Okay, yeah. Yeah, a great way to do that is to, if you have, if you have a Facebook page for your church, find the other folks in your community that you want to know about you. Maybe it's the other liberal religious folks, maybe it's an interfaith council, maybe it's a winter homeless shelter, maybe it's the soup kitchen. Find those folks that you want to be in their circle and follow their Facebook pages. So make sure you're paying attention to them. It's a back and forth thing. The algorithm that Facebook uses changes all the time, but in general, the more you post something to your Facebook page, the more frequently it will show up in other people's news feeds. So try and keep a schedule where you're posting something at least 2 or 3 times a week. If you change the photo, the background photo on your Facebook change, it also boosts how often your page appears in other people's news feeds. So that's another little trick of the trade, at least until Facebook changes it again. But yeah, it can be a way of at least keeping your church community together, but often as well, people who are looking for a congregation will look online first. So they will look for websites, and if you have recorded sermons, they will listen to those, and they will look at your Facebook page. And typically folks have checked you out at least 5 or 6 times before they cross your front door. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And if you don't have a church website, or if you're not happy with your church website, the UUA has a free template. It's got the UUA branding colors on it. You can just upload the language that you want to reflect your own community, but the structure, the infrastructure is there, so you don't have to hire somebody to do that work for you. That's available to you as well. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, ideas?
Do you have some suggestions on caring committees or how to do the pastoral work without a pastor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. We do have some resources for building lay pastoral care teams, and a lot of pastoral care we know how to do, right? We know how to show up when people are having surgery, or when a new baby is born, or when there's been a car accident. We know how to show up for each other in those times. I would recommend, though, that you do be in contact with a minister in a neighboring congregation if there is a UU church within 20 or so miles, or in an interfaith chaplain or another liberal religious pastor in your community, just in case there is a tragedy that happens that is beyond really the care of what lay folks are prepared to and trained to do. So if there's like a sudden death that really causes trauma to a family or a congregation, or for help planning funeral services, our UU ministers are more than happy to help out for those needs. We also have a list on our website of ministers who are in New England who are available for pulpit supply and also for things like weddings and funerals that are available to serve for an honorarium. But we do keep a list of those in case you have that kind of need. And I will try and remember to include the pastoral care resources in the follow-up email, but Derby Line, if I forget, you'll remind me, right?
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
How about church worship services that don't have a sermon? They're more creative and broad-reaching than a sermon. Is there any success any place with that?
Sure, lots of places have at least one or more worship services a year that are musically based. These are folks who have a really strong music ministry. So that is one thing, one opportunity you could have. There are some churches that also use TED Talks. I've seen it more in our humanist fellowships where they'll come together on the Sunday morning and they'll watch a TED Talk and then have a discussion afterwards. So they will have some opening words and closing words as well, but it's not structured like a
TED Talk
service. Any other ideas from other folks? Non-traditional kind of worship services?
I like that idea.
Who wants to discuss?
I saw on a website that somebody had a recent solstice service, or they're planning for a solstice service that happens outdoors.
Oh, no.
There's also, I know it's maybe not in most of our wheelhouses, but akin to the Labyrinth, liturgical dance. And also there are Quaker style meetings, and there are a lot of wonderful resources for small group ministry that could be adapted. And I also would challenge that we have some really wonderful lay preachers among us. And I mean, I think that would take some careful consideration, some consultation with the UUA, maybe if it's not something that is a tradition, as it is in my congregation, because I think that you'd want to have some boundaries and some ways of being and doing, and that you could consult Karen for that. But.
Yeah, thank you, Melinda. We also have had some worship services that are meditative. I believe it's in the Chelmsford area that they have a monthly evening worship service that is Lectio Divina. So they have a reading that they bring from whatever text the person who's organizing it brings the reading. They share the reading and have a moment of silence, and then it's shared again, and then there's silence again until folks in the room are called to respond to the reading. So it's meditative, it's reflective, it can go in a lot of different directions as well. And if you want more, if you want to spend more time thinking about alternative worship services, give me a call or send me an email and let's set up a time to talk more. I know I went through a whole lot of things really, really quickly, and I wish we had more time to be together so I could have more feedback and we could have more dialogue. You're a small enough group of folks that I can say this, that if you want to have an individual conversation after this webinar about some of the things that I zipped past or some of the things I missed entirely, I would love to talk more about that, and also to learn more about what's happening in your congregation and how our region can better support lay-led congregations. So please take me up on this. After the webinar, be in touch and let's set up a time to have more conversations. Does that sound okay? Yeah, some thumbs up. Okay, great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're coming to the end of our time, so I'm just going to put up our last slides. I have some closing words, and I thank you all so much for your time and your attention and for being with us, and mostly for all the work that you're doing to keep your beautiful little lay-led congregations alive. Small congregations are the heartbeat of Unitarian Universalism. They are more than 50% of congregations in New England and almost 2/3 of congregations nationwide. So we need you, and we are grateful for you, and thank you for all you're doing. The closing words that I have for this evening are from Wayne Arneson. Take courage. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. But take courage, friend, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. Thank you again for spending time with us tonight. There will be a follow-up email with a survey, and we ask you to send that survey back and help us know how we're doing and how we can improve. There will also be a second email that will come to you that has this video recording and the chat. I will save the chat in case there's stuff you want to go back to there, and a bunch of resources that we've curated for you. And as always, call me, email me, text me, any way you want to communicate, let me know. I'll be glad to hear from you. Thank you all. Great. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. It was
Thanks for
wonderful.
being with us. Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
You too. Thank you.